Hi everyone, my name is Amelia Brewsher and today I'm going to be talking to you about one of Escala's newest pieces in its collection, Ichárhuta by Abraham Cruzvillegas. And this piece by Cruzvillegas, it has a great deal of story behind it, I think anyway. And it's part of a wider project Cruzvillegas undertook back in 2017 called the Water Trilogy. And this project spanned three different exhibitions across three different cities. And anyone who knows or is familiar with Cruzvillegas' work will know his practice of repurposing materials. It's a process he calls auto-reconstruction. And for Cruzvillegas, this practice is heavily influenced by his childhood in Mexico City and just watching the resourcefulness of the communities around him. And the links to his roots are explored even further in the Water Trilogy, which was a project that he aimed to highlight the issues of water scarcity, specifically in Pátzcuaro in the Michoacán area of Mexico. And the exploration of water is evident almost immediately, I think, when you look at Ichárhuta in a really delicate, intricate way. We obviously see two 50 peso notes. The first lies flat and the second is folded into the shape of it's actually a traditional butterfly canoe, traditional to Lake Pátzcuaro. So here we see, again, a continuation of Cruzvillegas' practice of repurposing materials, using materials in unconventional ways for artistic purpose. And in the first note, we obviously also see fishermen navigating the waters of the lake, and they're actually using native Purapacha fishing nets as well, and I'll come back to the Purapacha community again in a second. But why I think obviously Cruzvillegas has chosen this, again, his roots, but equally over the years Lake Pátzcuaro has been subject to a huge decline in its water levels, which have caused a massive decline in the native species of the lake, as well as just in its general environmental functionality, and this in turn has caused a great deal of impact on the native Purapacha community, and they live around the lake and have done for centuries. And the environmental degradation is largely due to overfishing and pollution, which is obviously what we hear about a lot today. It's probably worth mentioning here as well, actually, that this piece is one of 49, which is actually really poignant because 49 is the number of years in which the lowering of the water levels in the lake has been indexed to, which I think just goes to show that sort of nothing in this piece and in the wider Water Trilogy has been left to chance, really. And why I think this is such an important topic of exploration is that Lake Pátzcuaro, it not only provides a food source for the community, but it's also deeply rooted within the cultural identity of the people who live around it, and it's an economic resource as well through fishing industries and things like that. And the first note, obviously, we see it's shown in a worn state, and it also has folding guidelines that serve as instructions. So when you fold it, it turns into the shape of the canoe, the traditional butterfly canoe I mentioned earlier, which you obviously see below. And again, we immediately know it's a small canoe, and there's such a calmness to this piece. And I still feel it when I look at it, and it's fascinating because the issues facing Lake Pátzcuaro, and they are alarming and they are dramatic, and they're also issues that are faced by other communities, and especially those set around water. But I always just admire how Cruzvillegas has referenced all of this, but kept such a calmness and a tranquility to the piece. And I always think it's probably similar to how the communities feel about the bodies of water that surround them as well. Now, in the second piece, we can see the reverse of the note, and that's the face of Jose Maria Morelos, who was a fighter in the Mexican independent movement, and he was also born close to the lake as well. And I think the use of money, it not only references sort of the economic impact of the lake, but it's just a fine example of Cruzvillegas' creativity in repurposing materials. And there's a quote in which he talks about how we often reduce money purely down to its monetary value, and we forget its aesthetic and communicative quality and potential. And I think that's really evident in this piece. You almost forget you're looking at banknotes because it's so intricate. Another part of the lake's cultural and historical significance I just wanted to touch on quickly is the Ichárhuta, which are a small salamander, and they're only found in Lake Pátzcuaro and nowhere else in the world. And because of all the environmental degradation that's been happening, their numbers have been depleting rapidly, and the Ichárhuta feature quite heavily in the Water Trilogy series, so they're obviously a point of concern for Cruzvillegas. And there's actually an amazing story that I recommend reading up on if you want to read something feel good ever, because it was actually a group of Dominican nuns in Pátzcuaro that started a captive breeding program to save this species, and they now have over 300 Ichárhuta living with them in their convent. And they've actually been called by environmentalists the key to the Ichárhuta survival, and they're obviously heavily invested in its conservation, as are the wider kind of community around the lake. So just to summarise really why I love this piece so much and why I thought it was such a great addition to the Ichárhuta collection. It's so multifaceted and it has so many layers in such a delicate piece. Like I said, there's a calmness to it, but the issues explored are tenfold, really. You know, when we think about the impact of pollution on our environment, specifically water and bodies of water, and the impact on the ecosystem and the species of that water. But then again, the knock-on effects this has on the communities settled close to water, particularly those in Latin America. And again, this is not something that is just food or an economic resource, but it's deeply rooted within tradition and cultural identity, as it is with many Indigenous communities. And I just find this piece fascinating and also heartbreaking and inspiring, and I hope that you guys have enjoyed hearing a little bit more about it. So thank you.